What is up, plant people? It is Tuesday, May 12th, 2020, during the coronavirus lockdown, depending on where you are. Texas is starting to open some things back up, and, we're going to see how that goes over the next few weeks. But this is Vikram Baliga, your host for the Planthropology Podcast, the show where we dive into the lives and careers of some really cool plant people. And I have a great one for you today with a friend of mine named Paige Boyle. But before we get to that, a couple of things. Y'all, I need new ideas. I need new guests. I've got stuff that I want to talk about, but I want to know what you want me to talk about so that the things that I want to talk about can be the same things that you want me to talk about. I don't know if that made any sense at all, and I don't care. So do me a favor, send me some ideas, whether you connect on social media or email me at planthropologypod@gmail.com, or if we're, connected in some other way, shoot me a message, a text message, drop me an idea. If you would like to be a guest on the show, I would love to have you. If you're a plant person or a nature person or someone who thinks that what they do can relate to plants, and, we talked about squid last week. So, it can just be closely related. I want to talk to you. So shoot me an email, connect through the website, find me somehow, and let's get together and let's come up with some new stuff for the show. Also, reviews. If you want to leave me a review on iTunes or on Podchaser, take a screenshot of it and send it my way. I would love to mail you a handwritten note saying thank you and telling you how awesome you are with a couple of stickers. Also, we have a sponsor for the show, a partner in crime, if you will, except no crimes are being committed, just nerdiness and pecans. So go check out Pecan Ridge at pecanridge.com. Find all kinds of great gifts, pecan-related products. If you say pumpkin pie to them, they'll probably throw things at you. It's all pecan pie all the time. It's not pronounced pecan. It's called Pecan Ridge, pecanridge.com. Mother's Day was last weekend, but it is not too late to send your mom something cool. So head over there, use the promo code PLANTPeople at checkout and get 10% off your order. So again, that is Pecan Ridge at pecanridge.com. Another thing I'm going to start doing at the end of these episodes after the credits is running a promo for a show that you should be listening to. Now, this may be a science or science adjacent show. It may just be a show that I like, or, some creators that I'm friends with on Twitter or in person or wherever else, because this is not the only science show out there. There are some really darn good ones. And so stick around through the credits, and I'm not going to do a mid-roll like a lot of shows do. I want to make sure that my guests and the scientists that I talk to and all the people I talk to kind of get your undivided attention during the episode. But stick around through the credits. I want you to hear it. Today, you'll hear a promo for a really cool science show that's, again, a little not safe for work. We talked about them recently, called Petri Dish, but Sean and Nathan do a great job on that show. So stick around through the credits and listen to a quick 30-second promo for Petri Dish. So, today's guest, Paige Boyle. Paige and I met at a conference a few years ago and have just kept up through Twitter, and I've followed some of her research, and we, interact fairly regularly on there. And I thought what she does would be so interesting for y'all to hear about. She is an ecologist. She's researched everything from turfgrass to earthworms and now clovers. She's a PhD student right now in ecology at Utah State University, a member of 500 Women Scientists, very involved in women in STEM and a big proponent of women in STEM, and just really an A+ exceptional human. We had a great conversation, recorded quite some time ago, but you know what? Earthworms are always relevant. So get comfy, put some earbuds in, throw on your headphones, turn up your car speakers, and settle yourself in for another wonderful episode of the Planthropology Podcast, and stay cool. Well, we are recording. So, Paige, thanks for chatting with me today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
How's your, you said your semester started this week. How's it going so far? Have you had classes? Have you done things
It's
yet?
good. So I'm actually only in one class, and it's a science communication class, actually. So pretty excited for that. But we only meet in person once every 3-ish weeks. So we met last night. It was like a 4:30 to 7 o'clock class, which isn't great.
Wow.
But yeah, we only meet once every 3 weeks, so that's nice.
Okay. That's a long time. That feels like a very long time.
And very late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay. So you are at Utah State currently. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I always try to do my homework, and I'm like afraid that I'm going to say like just completely the wrong place. I know I will eventually. So how did you get there? Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get into plants and all the things you do?
Yeah. Goodness. So I've always loved plants. I'm not good at growing them. But back in like middle school, I started a garden, and we just got a bunch of railroad ties and topsoil, and nothing grew, but it was great. And then high school, I took some ag classes just as electives and really fell in love with horticulture, and I was on the floriculture team, and it was great. So that was actually what I was going to go to college for. I was all set up to go to North Dakota State and study horticulture there. And then my last semester of high school, I took an AP environmental science course. And as weird as this probably sounds, we learned about a wastewater treatment facility where they used basically just plants to clean the water. And I thought that was fascinating. And so for the longest time, I wanted to be a wastewater treatment facility manager.
Okay.
Looking back, I'm glad that didn't happen. But that's how I got into environmental science. So I ended up going to University of Arkansas for my bachelor's, where I got a degree in environmental soil and water science. Really loved it. Was looking for some grad school options. I had done some research during my undergrad on earthworms, on composting. And my advisor there was working with Dr. Richardson in the horticulture department, trying to figure out this earthworm problem. And they couldn't really find anyone else that wanted to take over the project. And so that's how I got shuttled into it. I didn't really want the project either at the time, but I'm really glad I did now.
Okay.
So I did my master's with Dr. Richardson, looking at earthworm control on golf courses.
Okay.
And then at ASA back in Tampa, I think, he introduced me to Dr. Cope, who's one of the few female turfgrass scientists. And so I came out here maybe a year after that for a tour, and here I am 2 years later.
That's awesome. So it's funny how much that happens, that you get into a program and it's like, well, there's funding. And that's why I studied olives in my master's. I didn't know that I cared about olive trees, but
right.
I think we end up, finding things that we're passionate about through that. So I want to get back to earthworms. I think I'm very interested in earthworms and composting and just, and even what you talked about wastewater processing and just bioremediation and all that. So I'll talk about that a little bit. But so your current research, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, right now I am looking at 4 different clover species and mixing those in with Kentucky bluegrass for kind of these eco-lawns. It's not super big out here, but up in Minnesota, they just started a rebate program for like lawns to legumes, I think it's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
So converting your lawn into some sort of pollinator-friendly habitat. But a lot of the research has only looked at like white clover or some of these like English daisy, things like that. Mm-hmm. And while I was at Arkansas, Michelle Wisdom was doing some research on including bulbs for early forage for pollinators and some of these clovers and things like that. So I got interested in that, watching her research, and so just kind of brought that out here, and it's been a lot of fun.
Okay. That's really cool. And I think, so my degree, my PhD, assuming I finish it, I think I will. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, I will have defended and we'll have passed that.
Yeah, I just try not to think about that.
Just like it's just general anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's always something like floating over my head. Like it's always there. It's always there.
Last night, just randomly, like I have not heard anything about my comp exams, nothing. But last night I just woke up in a panic about them. So it just lingers.
It's real life, folks.
Yep.
Like for whatever reason, grad school just like gets in your brain and then it's there. It's just there forever.
Yes, it does.
Well, that's really cool. And so my degree will be in turf grass, but I've studied more of the water conservation side. How common do you think it is? So two questions here. First, you're talking about researching on mixed lawns and like you said, eco lawns, which I think is where we're going to have to head. I think at some point we don't have a choice but to be more diverse with our species selection and more conservative with our models and stuff like that. Do you find pushback on that, like in the industry?
Yes. I don't know. I feel like I've had a lot of controversial research topics in general. I get a lot of pushback on the earthworms.
Okay.
Yeah, people are not excited about clover inclusion. And I think part of that issue is if you include things like clovers or English daisies, some of these broadleafs, you can't control other weedy species.
Right. Okay.
And so that's a big barrier. And not a lot is known about some of these clover species in general, not even as it relates to inclusion in turf, but I mean, rose clover I had never heard of. I'm using crimson clover, which a lot is known, but it's all pasture settings.
Okay.
So just people don't know, and people don't know that it's an option. And especially out here in the West, people are moving towards xeriscaping.
Sure.
Instead of these lawn systems. And so that's one thing that is kind of hard to tackle is, okay, yes, you could have rocks in your lawn, but then you're losing all of these functions that turf or some of these mixtures can provide. So if we include some of these other species, then you get some of these benefits that people don't think about. And that might be a selling point for keeping your lawn. Sure.
Well, no, and that's really interesting. That's really great because I think that we have kind of fallen into the industry, parts of the industry where it's all or nothing, right? It's like you have just perfectly manicured. I don't know what grass species you have. We grow Bermuda grass here, so. No,
we do not grow Bermuda grass here.
It's probably too cold, right?
A lot of fescue and bluegrass.
Okay, right. So we're right in the zone where Bermuda grass does well half the year and fescue does well half the year. But at some point, regardless of what you have, your lawn's going to look like crap. That's my part of the country. And so, but people here especially, and I guess I can't speak too much to anywhere else, are like, either you just have rocks or either you just have grass. And like this mixed landscape is really, for me, I like that. As someone who knows about plants, I would rather have plant cover than rocks.
Yeah, same.
But at the same time, like I do understand that at some point, some of our current and past practices are maybe not as sustainable as we would really like. So no, that's really cool research. And I'm interested to hear, where that goes and what we find. Yeah. That's again, another thing about research. It's like, we may find something. I don't know.
Who knows?
So the second half of that question, and I was looking at, and I hope this isn't creepy, but I was looking at your website earlier. I like to try to do at least a little bit.
That's what it's there for.
Well, I know. I like to do at least a little bit of I was going to say creeping. That's not the word I meant, but just a little bit of research on my guests before I talk, just so I'm not like, so who are you? Which, by the way, if I don't have a professional, like personal website like this, and yours is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean, but really, this is like, I don't know why I've never thought to make myself one of these, but it's really good. Anyway, so I see that you've done a little bit of work, and you're involved with like women in STEM programs and women in turf and things like that. And you mentioned when you were talking a little bit ago that you found the one female turfgrass, researcher. What's that? Like, I can't speak to that experience. What's that been like for you, being, a woman researching in a STEM field, and especially a STEM field that is so massively male dominated?
Yes. Yeah. Turf is insanely male dominated. I'll be in a room when I'm at GIS or one of these talks, and, it's 100 people in the audience and I'm the only woman.
Right.
So it's really interesting. Sometimes I have to, think about what I'm about to say a little bit more, maybe, and accept what others say a little bit more and just kind of take it with a grain of salt. And the turf industry has been so much more welcoming than some of these other industries that I've been in. So I'm really grateful for that. The industry as a whole is amazing, and I really hope that I can stay working with this group of people. But I am really passionate about advancing women in STEM, and so that's why I do participate in 500 Women Scientists and Skype a Scientist. You and I have talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to show that scientists aren't, middle-aged white men necessarily.
Right.
A lot of them are.
Sure.
But science is becoming such a diverse area, and I think it's really important to highlight that. And make sure that the younger generations know that they do belong here, because they can bring some different viewpoints to things.
Yeah.
I think that's also important for some of this, like, kind of out of the box research that I personally have been involved in turf. I know nothing about turf, but I know a lot about earthworms and turf, and I know a lot about clover and turf, and that's important. So I don't know. It's been a wild ride, but I love it.
Oh yeah, no, that's great. I'm sure it has been. Because and you said that, you go to these meetings, and I've spoken at a few turf meetings, and I've noticed, you every time you speak, I think you survey the audience, because you've got to see what can you say, what shouldn't you say, and for better or worse, I tend to just say things. And I get in trouble for it a lot, but I tend to just say stuff. But you're certainly right that at a lot of these turf meetings, you look around and there's maybe one or two women in the audience, maybe on a and that's a pretty inclusive like group.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for that. My wife works in the sciences as well, and she's in informal education. She is the education coordinator at Science Museum, and they try to do a lot of programming for girls in STEM fields, whether it's through there's some grants and some different educational region programming, or like through the Girl Scouts and stuff like that. But, and it's something that I think we all should and need to be more aware of, that the way that school systems are built and the way that information is presented, I'm kind of speaking from the outside here, but it seems like young women are not necessarily incentivized or pushed towards science fields. And I hope that's changing. Right. I feel like that's changing to some extent.
I feel like it is. And I'm doing what's it called? Letters to a Pre-Scientist right now this semester as well. And it's been really interesting because they do studies, or they present studies during our training, and they have students, and these are all middle-aged students, draw pictures of a scientist and before and after programs like these. And a vast majority of them before programs like Skype a Scientist or something where they bring in scientists. It's a white man in a lab coat dealing with little beakers of chemicals. But afterwards, you see that they do show more diversity, and it's a really interesting thing to see how just something little like Skyping with a scientist that isn't a white man
Right.
can change the viewpoint of these students. And so I think we're moving in the right direction.
That's awesome.
For sure.
That's really good to hear. That's like really good to hear. Okay. So earthworms.
Yes.
I like earthworms. I know very little about earthworms.
I knew nothing before my master's, so.
But you seem like you're super interested in earthworms now. Like that's a thing, right?
Like how bizarre. Yeah, I took this project that no one else wanted, and it's been great. Yeah, who knew earthworms?
So
a problem.
so okay, are they a problem? Like they cause an issue, or like the lack of earthworms causes an issue? I don't know if I asked that well.
No, I get what you're saying. So coming into this project from an environmental standpoint, like I always thought like earthworms are great. Turns out that that's not always the case. So on golf courses specifically, there are species that are invasive to the U.S. and they come up into these sandy greens or a lot of the times fairways as well. And they come up to the surface and they'll poop and it causes a lot of issues. Mostly with maintenance. They can build up on the reels of mowers and all of that and cause issues with mowing. But they also can cause disease or bring up weed seeds or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're also a really big problem in forest where they can eat through that litter layer really quickly. And so the entire nutrient cycling of that system is now different than it would have been without those invasive earthworms. So yeah, it's really bizarre.
That's fascinating. Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah. because like you said, my headcanon for earthworms is that earthworm's good, right? Yeah. Like regardless, if you see an earthworm, he's your buddy. He's good for your plants, good for your soil, whatever. And it never, and I don't know why, I deal with invasive species and plants. An invasive earthworm never even occurred to me. Like I never even thought of that.
There are, I'm trying to think, like 2 or 3 earthworm genera that are native to the U.S., but it's mostly areas that were not under glaciers before. So mostly East Coast, West Coast. Mm-hmm. A lot of these species have come in from Asia and Europe, and I mean, many, many years ago.
Sure.
But they're changing the entire system. And especially on golf courses that are not natural systems, you're bringing in these invasives. And yeah, they can have really interesting and not great effects. So. Okay.
That kind of just, I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here because that kind of blew my mind a little bit. It drives home the point to me a little bit of how complex ecosystem sciences are. And plant sciences and everything in between. I think there's maybe a little bit of a misconception out there when we talk about plant sciences and ecosystems. And, I don't know if it's that like some of the stuff we do just isn't as sexy as like, oh, I'm researching a cure for cancer and those things are good.
I'm controlling earthworms.
Right. Or I literally watch grass grow. Like that was my research project. I watched grass grow. But when you start to really break it down and think about it, I mean, and I'm glad there are people that do the flashier side of science and all of that. I'm glad those people that are there. But the fact that even as something as simple as an earthworm moving into a forest system can change the entire nutrient balance of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think about all the unintended consequences we have when we start messing with natural systems.
Yeah, for sure.
And it makes me ask the question a little bit, which is maybe beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. But how many like really truly natural systems are left? Because
I actually just led a lab discussion last semester about this idea of novel ecosystems and the idea that people want to revert back to historical norms, but how do we decide what point in history is natural and normal and native?
Yeah.
Because it's changed so much. And even reverting back to some of these ecosystem standards that might have been natural 50 or 100 or several hundred years ago might not be sustainable in our current climate or society or whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, this whole idea of like novel ecosystems, what's natural, is anything natural anymore? It's really interesting.
It's interesting and like a little scary.
Yes.
That's one of those things that you almost have to try not to think about too hard.
Yes.
Like all the time. Or like you said, or you'll wake up in the middle of the night like there's earthworms everywhere. Like they're taking over. Oh man. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about a little bit about the science communication stuff you do, because we've touched on it through like Skype a Scientist and some of these other programs, but you also work quite a bit, it seems like, with like the science societies, the agricultural society and crop science and all those groups. How did you, and I don't even know how to ask the question I want to ask really, but how did you get into being so involved with some of these professional science organizations?
Kind of by accident, like most of the things that I get involved in. Back in Tampa, I guess, I participated in the Graduate Student Leadership Conference that the Tri-Societies puts on every year. And I met some really cool grad students, which was kind of part of the point of the whole session.
Right.
And wanted to get a little bit more involved in the societies, didn't know what that might look like. And then last year, I was invited to join the graduate student committee that's part of the Tri-Societies. And we helped organize, I don't even know, a ton of sessions for this last meeting. Back in, where were we this year? I don't even know. It was only 2 months ago.
They kind of run together.
Wherever we were last year, we ran a bunch of sessions. And then as part of my work with that committee, I got asked to participate kind of last minute on the Crop Science Society's student-wide competition. And so I didn't really help organize that one this year, but I will be more involved next year because I only got brought in on a couple of weeks before the meeting. But that was when we had one student from every crop science division participate in kind of a society-wide competition. They had to do a poster and like a 5-minute rapid talk. So that was really interesting. And then I got asked to participate this year in the kind of undergrad mentoring grad student advancement, I don't know what it's called, committee.
Okay.
But basically helping undergrads figure out if they want to go to grad school. Okay. And yeah, so just kind of from that, it snowballed, and I'm also on the C5 division grad student committee, also by accident. I gave a suggestion about what the workshop might be and got pulled into that. And but it's been great. I've met a lot of people, and it's great for my CV. So okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's pretty intense. You're way it is a lot. You're way more involved than I think I ever have.
All by accident.
Well, that's
and a lack of being able to say no.
Yeah, that too. Well, and like you got to be real careful if you're out there listening and you're a grad student or anybody. You've got to be real careful making suggestions because people will be like, "That is a great idea. Let me know how it goes." Yep. It's like, oh no, okay. I was hoping someone else would do that.
Yep. Learn to say no.
Yeah, that is, I always ask like for one piece of advice, like from the people I talk to. That's a pretty good one.
Yes, it is. And I wish I had learned it. I still have not, but.
Oh, I'm bad at it too. I'm really bad at it too. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I can do that. But, but I think that's actually a really important thing to discuss a little bit is in academia, especially as a grad student, everyone from your committee to the university, everyone wants you to do something, especially if you're capable, right? Especially if you are smart and driven and ambitious and capable, like which we all should be, and I think we all are in different ways. But it's like, oh, well, we need you to kind of take on this other project, or can you oversee this undergrad doing something? Or
it can build really quickly.
But ultimately, like it's like our careers, right? Like, so we have to do our research and we have to do our writing and we have to graduate for our own personal careers. And so I can't really talk. I don't have a leg to stand on about saying no to things, but
me neither.
but that is something really important.
Yeah.
So something interesting. I think we actually met just briefly at that Tampa conference, just at dinner one night or something.
Yep.
We're both kind of in the turf world, and then have just kind of like kept up on Twitter since then. Academic Twitter is such an interesting thing.
I was so against Twitter, and then during my master's, I realized that the turf community is so active on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And if you're a grad student and you're not on Twitter, no one knows about you.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I was so against it, but I'm so glad that I joined now and that I'm somewhat active, because it has led to, I'm giving 4 or 5 talks this year about earthworms. I was contacted about doing the BMPs for Utah golf courses because of Twitter. And so it's been really great for me, but it is such a bizarre world. It
really is. And what I thought was interesting, and it is an interesting dynamic, because on the one hand, I think you connect with all these other grad students and academics and see the struggles that people go through. And I think it kind of makes our, because I think we struggle sometimes in academia with like just circling the wagons and drawing in. And it's like you and maybe your lab group, maybe just you kind of against the world. Sometimes it feels that way. So it is interesting getting to get on there and see like, oh, there's this grad student in Europe that's dealing with the same issues with academia that I am. But sometimes I also feel like just reading through some of these posts that it just becomes like an echo chamber again. And like,
I agree. Yes.
So it's an interesting just kind of dichotomy there between because there's a lot of good to it, but sometimes I think we just complain a little bit.
I agree.
I know I do.
Which, like coming here to Utah, I don't have a lab group really. Mm-hmm. And so, coming from Arkansas where we had, 6 or 7 really good grad students that were pretty close and we could support each other. And then coming here where I'm basically on my own, my advisor was, on sabbatical for a year. And it's been good for me personally, because I see those other people and like I don't have anyone here, or I didn't at the time, to talk about those issues with. But yes, it can definitely become kind of a rabbit hole of not necessarily negativity, but just rehashing the same issues over and over.
Sure. But but that also does point to as younger academics like you and I are, I don't know that I consider myself young anymore. I don't
know that I do either.
I'm in my 30s, and I'm like I'm not young anymore. I'm getting old, but as people who are early in their career, maybe that's a better way to say
it.
I think things like this Twitter community and just podcasts, different things like that, maybe they point out some of the things in the whole academic culture that need work.
Right.
And as people that are kind of the next generation of academics, seeing some of those issues maybe a little more openly discussed and things like that.
Right.
Hopefully will pay dividends.
Yeah, we can keep those ideas in mind as we kind of move forward into these higher positions and address some of those issues that we currently are facing, instead of just keeping in this cycle
right
that everyone's kind of stuck in right now.
Yeah, and it's a weird world if you're not in academia. Like it's a weird world for sure. So we've done about half an hour. What else? What didn't I cover? I mean, I'm trying to remember. Because again, I read through your website earlier and I was like, okay, I have questions, and then I didn't write them down because I'm really bad at stuff. So we talked about the saying no thing. Do you have any, like, if you could, whether it's to a graduate student, whether it's to someone, I don't know, who wants earthworms in their yard or something like that, if you could give a piece of advice just to our listeners, I guess another one, what would that be?
I say just experiment. Just going back to the lawns, like, plant some bulbs, see what happens, plant some clover, take care of the bees. I don't know, just everyone gets so stuck in this monoculture, lush green grass idea, and I think there's so much creativity that we're losing because of that. And so just get a little weird, do something new.
I like that. I would wear that t-shirt, just like a turf t-shirt that just says "Get a little weird." I would definitely wear that. I
might have to add that to my website.
I think you should. I don't know if everyone needs a slogan. I don't know. No, that's really good advice. Of just don't be scared to try something new.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Not going to mess anything up.
If it doesn't work, you can kill it and start new.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, at some point it's like, well, half the planet's on fire right now anyway. So try new stuff. What's the worst thing? I mean, I shouldn't say that. I should not say that, but like try new things. I think that's great. So where can people find you? Plug your stuff. Let us know what's out there.
Yeah, I am at Boiled Worms, BOYLED on Twitter. I have a website. I don't even know what it is, but it's on my Twitter.
I'll link it.
And yeah, I'm just around if anyone wants to talk earthworms, clover, compost.
Okay.
Always happy to talk.
Oh, before I let you go, I remember the other thing I wanted to talk about or ask you about. What is your favorite earthworm fact? What is the weirdest thing you know about earthworms?
They're hermaphrodites, which is pretty interesting, and I thought it was interesting.
No, that's interesting.
A lot of them. So there's this one called the crazy Asian stinkworm, or the snake worm, sometimes they call it. And if you touch it, it literally looks like a snake. It'll like thrash around. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I've only seen one of them in person in my life, but they're so bizarre. It's crazy.
Huh. I'll find a picture of one of those or a video, and I'll put it in the post that goes with this. Well, Paige, thanks so much for talking with me. I really enjoyed that. I think that was just a great overview of a lot of cool things.
Thank you.
So, some take-home messages for today. Paige is really cool and has done a little bit of everything. Earthworms are totally wild, and you should learn to say no to stuff. Hey, thanks for listening, everyone. Y'all are really the best. You can connect with us, as always, on Instagram, Twitter, on Facebook. Search for Planthropology. It's anthropology with a PL slapped on the front. Look for the green background with the white tree, and that'll be us. Thanks, as always, to the Texas Tech Department of Plant and Soil Science for all of their support of this show and all of their support of me. It's really just the best place to work in academia. I'll be back next week with Abby Morrison, who is the host of the Field Lab Earth podcast, which is another show you should be listening to. It's wonderful, and I'm really excited about that episode. We're going to go back in June to our regularly scheduled twice a month program, but there's a cool project that I'm working on with a buddy that you should be excited about, and you will hear a lot more about soon. But as always, y'all are awesome, and stick around just a little bit longer to learn some more about the Petri Dish podcast, starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ich bin ein
Science!
Cannabinoids,
Genetics!
coronavirus,
Dogs!
This is Petri Dish.
Science! We're a science podcast exploring complex subjects with clarity and evil humor.
Join the scientific revolution.
Join Petri Dish, dropping every Monday on anchor.fm/Petri Dish.